I've always thought my life was the picture of success, a perfect blend of professional achievement and personal fulfillment. My name is Richard Morgan, and for years I steered the strategic development department at one of the nation's largest corporations. From the outside looking in, everything seemed meticulously in order. A high-powered career, a sleek, modern home, and a marriage that many envied. But as I sit here reflecting on the quieter moments of our life, I can't help but notice the subtle fissures beneath the pristine veneer. My wife, Catherine, is no less accomplished. Working at a prestigious law firm, she's well on her way to securing a partnership, a goal she's chased with relentless ambition. Catherine's drive and intellect have always been among her most attractive qualities, and I've admired her for it since the day we met. Yet lately, that ambition seems to have carved a distance between us. In the early days, we were an unstoppable duo. We celebrated every milestone together and supported each other's dreams without question. I remember the thrill of closing a major deal at work and how Catherine's eyes sparkled with pride when she congratulated me. But slowly, the conversations that once flowed effortlessly have given way to silent dinners and hurried goodnights. The warmth in her smile has faded into something more guarded, and I can't shake the feeling that unspoken conflicts are brewing. It's ironic, really. Here we are, a couple who has crafted what appears to be an ideal life. Yet beneath that perfection lies a tension I can neither ignore nor fully understand. Perhaps it's the pressure of living up to expectations, or the constant grind of our respective careers that leaves little room for the intimacy we once shared. I find myself wondering if our pursuit of success has unwittingly sown the seeds of discontent between us. I've tried to pinpoint the moment when things started to shift, but it seems more like a gradual erosion, a series of small compromises and overlooked conversations that have added up over time. While I still love Catherine deeply, I can't help but feel that the facade of our perfect marriage is beginning to crack. And in those cracks, I sense the beginnings of stories and secrets yet to be uncovered. I had meticulously planned every detail of my business trip, down to the last minute on my calendar. Every meeting, every call, every rendezvous with clients was mapped out in a way that left little room for error. It was the kind of schedule I was proud of, a testament to my efficiency and discipline. But as always, life has a way of throwing unexpected curveballs. This time, the unexpected began almost immediately. My clients, who were usually drawn out in negotiations, wrapped up their discussions far quicker than anticipated. What should have taken days turned into a matter of hours. I found myself with extra time I hadn't budgeted for, and decided to return home 2 days earlier than planned. I thought it might be a good opportunity to spend some time with Catherine, or at the very least, to enjoy a quiet evening in the comfort of our home after a long week. As soon as I landed back, a sense of unease crept over me. It wasn't just the exhaustion from the trip, it was something else, something more intangible. I picked up my phone and dialed Catherine's number, expecting her to be at home, maybe even in a playful mood about my early return. But there was no answer. I tried her office number next, thinking she might have stayed late at the firm, perhaps celebrating a win or managing a crisis. Again, nothing. I didn't linger long on my disappointment. Instead, I drove home, hoping that maybe I had just reached her at the wrong time. But when I arrived at our house, it was eerily quiet. No lights flickering through the windows, no sound of the usual evening bustle. The silence was unsettling, punctuated only by the hum of my car engine as I sat in the driveway for several agonizing minutes, debating my next move. Frustration mounting, I called my assistant, who was always on top of things. Her voice was calm as she confirmed something that sent a chill down my spine. Both Catherine and her secretary were absent. Her secretary, someone Catherine had mentioned would be around all day, was nowhere to be found either. This was perplexing because earlier, Catherine had insisted she would be at work, handling important cases and preparing for her next big pitch. My mind raced with a myriad of questions. Had I missed something crucial during my trip? Was there an emergency at home? Or worse, had something happened to Catherine? The more I thought about it, the more my thoughts turned towards suspicion. It wasn't in my nature to jump to conclusions, but the evidence before me was hard to ignore. I tried to piece together every detail from the past few days. The hurried phone call from Catherine, her vague reassurances about being at the office, the unexpected end to my meetings. There was an odd synchronicity to these events, as if they were all part of a carefully orchestrated plan to conceal something. I began to wonder if my return home was not just a happy accident, but a deliberate act that revealed a hidden agenda. The idea gnawed at me. Was Catherine involved in something she hadn't told me? Or was there another layer to her life that I had been completely oblivious to? As I sat there, the quiet of our home turned from a welcome respite into a mocking reminder of all that was out of place. Every shadow, every creak of the floorboards seemed to echo my mounting anxiety. I considered the possibility that I might be overreacting, a victim of my own overactive mind after a grueling week. But deep down, a persistent voice insisted that there was more to this mystery than mere coincidence. I spent the next few hours pacing around the house, trying to find any clues that might explain the inexplicable absence. I checked Catherine's phone, her emails, even her work files, hoping to stumble upon something that could either ease my worry or confirm my worst suspicions. Nothing immediately jumped out, yet the feeling of being in the midst of an unfolding drama was undeniable. My thoughts drifted to the idea that perhaps Catherine had confided in someone, a secret partner, a confidant, or even an adversary I had yet to know about. I remembered the subtle shifts in her demeanor over the past months, the slight distance in her gaze when we talked about our future, the way she seemed preoccupied even when we were together. Had these unusual coincidences been building up for a long time, each one a small hint that something was amiss? As nights settled in, the silence of our home became oppressive. I sat in the living room, staring at the empty spaces that once resonated with warmth and familiarity. Every unanswered call, every unexplained absence, coalesced into a troubling picture. A picture that, piece by piece, began to hint at secrets I had never imagined. I knew I had to confront this head-on, despite the fear of what I might uncover. There was an unnerving certainty that the calm facade of our perfect life was about to shatter, revealing cracks that had been hidden in plain sight all along. And as I prepared myself to face whatever truth lay behind Catherine's sudden disappearance, I couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning of a much larger, more twisted narrative. A narrative that would force me to question everything I thought I knew about the life I had built. I arrived home at exactly 7:20 p.m., a full hour and 20 minutes later than the time I'd grown accustomed to. Catherine's usual routine had her returning by 6 p.m. sharp, every day like clockwork. That delay gnawed at me as I unlocked the front door. The house was unusually silent, the comforting hum of domestic life replaced by an eerie stillness. I tried calling her cell, but there was no answer. My gut churned with a mix of concern and something darker, a creeping suspicion I tried so hard to suppress. Later that night, as I sat alone in our dim living room, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with Catherine's name. Relieved yet anxious, I answered immediately. Her voice was unusually high-pitched, overly joyful, as if she were riding on a wave of uncharacteristic euphoria. "Richard, guess what?" she exclaimed. "I got the promotion. We need to celebrate this Sunday." There was a pause, and I could hear her inhaling sharply, as if mustering the energy to keep up the facade of excitement. But something about her tone felt off, strained, rehearsed, as if she were reciting lines from script. The unnatural cheeriness in her voice did nothing to alleviate my mounting concerns. Instead, it amplified them. The next morning, unable to shake off the lingering unease, I resolved to dig deeper. I moved with quiet determination through our shared study, where Catherine's notebooks lay scattered across her desk. Each page, meticulously filled with legal briefs, case notes, and personal jottings, told the story of a dedicated professional. Yet, as I leafed through them, I discovered something that sent a bolt of ice through my veins. A handwritten address scribbled on the margin of one notebook. The address wasn't just any location. It was linked to Travis Reitman, a lawyer whose name Catherine had mentioned on multiple occasions. The association between them had always seemed strictly professional, but now, this little detail hinted at a hidden layer of their connection. I couldn't let the possibility of infidelity go unexamined. With trembling determination, I set out to uncover the truth. I drove through the city until I found myself in an elite neighborhood, a place where manicured lawns and pristine houses spelled luxury and exclusivity. There, parked outside an imposing mansion, was a car that looked unmistakably like Catherine's. My pulse quickened as I watched it sit there, unwavering, as if it were marking territory. The sight was both oddly ordinary and yet deeply disturbing. Was she truly spending time with Travis in this affluent enclave? For the next 14 hours, I became almost a shadow, circling around that very house. I drove by again and again, each pass reinforcing the unsettling image of her car, parked there like a silent witness to some clandestine rendezvous. With every loop around that immaculate driveway, my mind spun with possibilities. Had I misinterpreted some innocent professional relationship? Or was I now standing on the precipice of a betrayal I had never fathomed? I tried to make sense of the disjointed signals, the inexplicable delay in her return, the artificially buoyant tone in her late-night call, and now this silent testimony of her vehicle parked in a neighborhood that was completely out of character for her. During those hours of surveillance, the world outside seemed to pause in a surreal tableau. I found myself questioning every conversation we'd ever had, every subtle glance that now reeked of hidden meaning. The quiet drive-by became a ritual, a desperate search for evidence that could either quell or confirm the swirling doubts that threatened to shatter my reality. Every time her car remained parked, a knot of dread tightened in my chest. I noted the exact times, the position of the sun, the peculiar stillness of the atmosphere, all in the vain hope that these details might eventually add up to reveal the truth. Inside, my mind battled with the possibility of confronting Catherine directly, of demanding explanations for her increasingly erratic behavior. Yet, even as I rationalized my actions as a search for truth, a part of me recoiled at the invasive breach of trust. I was a man who prided himself on logic and order, and here I was, caught in the chaos of suspicion, piecing together a puzzle with fragments of evidence and a growing sense of betrayal. I couldn't help but wonder how long this secret had been festering beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect marriage. Was it a recent development, triggered by the pressures of our high-stakes careers, or had the cracks been widening for much longer than I dared to believe? Each passing minute by that house deepened the mystery, turning the mundane act of driving into a desperate quest for validation of my worst fears. As the hours turned to night, I wrestled with the implications of what I had observed. The evidence of infidelity was not the dramatic spectacle I had imagined from movies or whispered warnings. It was a slow, insidious unveiling, a series of moments that, when stitched together, painted a picture of deceit. And now, as I sat behind the wheel with the darkened streets as my only company, I was forced to confront the painful possibility that the foundation of my marriage had been compromised by secrets, lies, and a betrayal that I was only beginning to comprehend. The drive back home was a blur of conflicting emotions: anger, sorrow, and a cold, creeping determination to uncover the full extent of Catherine's double life. That day, the quiet streets and the endless circuit around Travis Reitman's house had not only revealed the presence of a car, but also a hidden chapter in our lives that I was now compelled to read, no matter how painful the truth might be. I remember the exact moment the door clicked open the next day. It was 11:45 a.m. when Catherine walked in, looking as impeccable as ever. Her hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawlessly done, and an aura of calm confidence that had always drawn me in. But that day, everything felt different. The bright light of her entrance clashed with the dark, brooding room I had set up for our confrontation. I was already seated in my favorite chair, my expression as cold and unyielding as the steel of the armrest beneath me. Her eyes widened at the sight of me. For a split second, I saw her pause, a flicker of guilt, or perhaps fear, crossing her face before she hurried to mask it with a practiced smile. But I wasn't fooled. I could sense the tension radiating from her, as if the carefully constructed facade of our perfect life was on the verge of crumbling. I didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Catherine," I said, my voice low and measured, "I returned 2 days ago, and yet you're only just now walking through the door." My tone wasn't accusing, at least not overtly, but the underlying message was clear. Something was very wrong. The moment I mentioned my early return, something in her demeanor shifted drastically. Her smile faltered, her eyes darted away, and she flinched as if physically recoiling from the darkened room and the storm of silence that enveloped us. I leaned forward slightly, letting my gaze pierce through the distance between us. "Tell me about Travis," I demanded, my tone now edged with icy severity. The name hung in the air like a death knell, a trigger for the torrent of secrets I knew lay hidden behind her carefully chosen words. I watched as her face crumpled, her perfectly applied makeup smudging like tears on a stained glass window. At first, she tried to speak, her voice trembling as she stuttered out, It's nothing, Richard. Really, it's nothing," she fumbled with her words, trying desperately to cling to some semblance of control. "He just helped me with a few things at work." I said, "Thank you, really, that's all." I felt a bitter laugh rising in me, a laugh that quickly died on my lips. "You called 2 nights in his bed nothing?" I said coldly, the words slicing through the fragile silence of the room. The accusation hung in the air, each syllable a drop of venom meant to force the truth from her. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of our breathing, uneven and raw. Catherine's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and she attempted to muster another excuse, her voice breaking as she pleaded for understanding. I was just trying to get ahead in my career," she managed to say, the words tripping over each other in a desperate bid for justification. "It wasn't like that. I mean, it wasn't like you think." But I wasn't willing to let her spin another web of lies. My silent stare grew heavier, more intense, a mirror reflecting back all the betrayal and hurt I felt. Every second that passed, the truth of her infidelity became more undeniable. The weight of her deception was almost tangible, pressing down on us both as if the room itself were shrinking around the shattered remnants of our marriage. She tried once more to articulate some excuse, a feeble attempt to explain away the incongruity between the woman I had known for years and the woman now standing before me. But every word was drowned out by the silence of my unwavering gaze. It was as if my eyes were saying everything words could not, that the trust between us had been irreparably broken, that her betrayal was a wound too deep to simply heal with a few whispered apologies. In that stifling moment of confrontation, the world outside seemed to cease its spinning, leaving just the two of us in a universe of hurt and regret. Catherine's sobs began to fill the space between us, each one a small echo of the life we once shared, a life that was now being unraveled by secrets, lies, and choices that had led her astray. Her pleas fell on deaf ears as I absorbed every tear, every shuddering breath, and every whispered excuse as evidence of the truth I'd long suspected. The confrontation wasn't the dramatic explosion I had half expected. It was quieter, more devastating. There was no shouting, no dramatic declarations of vengeance. Instead, there was an unbearable, crushing silence punctuated only by the sound of her soft weeping and my own cold, calculated questions. I couldn't help but feel that the woman before me was no longer the Catherine I had fallen in love with, but a stranger wearing her skin, a stranger who had been living a double life right under my nose. That moment, filled with raw betrayal and the painful acknowledgement of a perfect marriage built on lies, was the turning point. I realized that the path ahead would be one of difficult truths and even harsher realities. And as I sat there, watching Catherine's facade crumble under the weight of her own deceit, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. I knew I couldn't let things slide, not after everything that had transpired. That morning, as I sat alone in our study trying to make sense of the chaos of emotions, an idea struck me. Catherine had left her phone carelessly on the desk after our confrontation. It was then that I decided to plug in a discreet recording device, one of those gadgets I kept for emergencies, and listen in on whatever conversation might come next. I hid in the shadows of our hallway, phone in hand, heart pounding in my ears. Soon enough, the screen lit up with a video call from Travis. I pressed the record button before the call even connected, determined to capture every detail. As soon as the conversation started, I could hear Catherine's voice, trembling and edged with panic. "Richard suspects something," she whispered, her tone a mixture of fear and resignation. The tremor in her voice was unmistakable. I held my breath, feeling as if I were a fly on the wall in a room where secrets festered. Travis's voice came through next, calm and deceptively reassuring. "Listen, Catherine, we can handle this. Just lie and say it was all about that secret government project. You know, the one that prevented you from telling him." His tone was clinical, as if discussing mundane business strategy rather than plotting deception. The absurdity of the excuse sent a chill through me, but it was far too real in its implications. They were not only concealing an affair, they were manufacturing an elaborate cover story. The conversation took a darker turn when Catherine's voice, barely above a whisper, mentioned another name, Daniel Brooks. I had something with him too," she admitted, almost as if confessing a terrible sin. Daniel, a junior partner who had just been promoted, was now another thread in this tangled web of deceit. Each name they dropped, Travis, Daniel, was a nail in the coffin of everything I thought I knew about our life together. And then came the shock. Travis mentioned that Margaret Davis, the firm's partner and someone I had long respected as a pillar of integrity, was also in on the scheme. "Margaret is helping us keep everything under wraps," he said. "She's instrumental in coming up with the cover story." We all agreed that if Richard ever got wind of it, the narrative of a secret government project would be our safe haven. The sheer scale of the conspiracy was staggering. Catherine's entire career, it seemed, had been built on a foundation of manipulation and deceit. Every high-power decision, every well-timed move up the ladder was part of an elaborate game, a game in which loyalty was just another pawn. Listening to their conversation, I felt a mix of rage and disbelief. The cold logic in Travis's words contrasted sharply with the emotional turmoil I was experiencing. It was as if I were listening to a detailed business plan instead of a betrayal of the deepest order. The recording device captured every word, every hesitant pause, and every desperate attempt at justification. Catherine's panicked tone and the calculated calm of her accomplices painted a picture of someone who had meticulously crafted a double life, one where professional ambition and personal betrayal intertwined in a way that left me utterly shattered. The notion of a secret government project was ludicrous enough on its own, a wild, almost comical fabrication meant to distract from the true nature of her betrayals. But what truly tore at me was the realization that the lies extended far beyond a simple affair. They had woven a network of deceit that involved high-level conspiracies and complicity from those I had trusted. Margaret Davis, a name synonymous with integrity and mentorship, had played a key role in this cover-up. It was as if every pillar of the institution that Catherine had climbed was now complicit in a scandal that went beyond personal betrayal. In that moment, the weight of everything crashed down on me. I realized that the woman I had loved and the partner I had trusted were nothing more than skilled performers in a well-rehearsed charade. Every compliment, every shared secret, every moment of intimacy had been calculated moves designed to advance her ambitions. The very foundations of our marriage, and my understanding of her, were built on a house of cards that was now collapsing. The recording device sat on the table, a silent witness to the unraveling of our lives. I listened to the conversation repeatedly, each playthrough etching the truth deeper into my mind. There was no escaping the fact that Catherine had willingly betrayed not only me, but the very essence of the partnership we had built together over the years. And the revelation of her additional liaison with Daniel Brooks was the final, excruciating blow. As I sat there, grappling with the enormity of the conspiracy, I couldn't help but reflect on how meticulously I had built my world, a world where every detail was planned and every outcome expected. Yet in a cruel twist of fate, it was the one area where I least expected it, the heart of my own home, that everything unraveled. The layers of lies and manipulation revealed that the ambitions driving Catherine were not about justice or fairness. They were about power, control, and the relentless pursuit of personal gain, even at the cost of those closest to her. That night, alone with the recording and the heavy silence of our now hollow home, I came to a stark realization. The perfect life I thought I knew was nothing more than an illusion, a carefully curated image maintained through a series of calculated betrayals. And as I prepared myself for the inevitable confrontation with the full truth, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The morning after I recorded Catherine's conversation with Travis, I sat in my office, staring at the damning evidence playing through my phone. Every word, every lie, every betrayal was now permanently etched into my mind, and soon it would be carved into the public record. I wasn't the kind of man to act impulsively. No, I was strategic, methodical. I had built my career on understanding weaknesses and using them to my advantage. And now I was going to do exactly that, but not in a boardroom. This time, I was taking the fight to Catherine, Travis, Margaret, and every other traitor who had built their success on deceit. The first step was legal action. I contacted one of the most ruthless litigation firms in the city, laying out my case in exact detail. The moment I presented the recorded conversation, their lead attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Evelyn Carter, leaned forward, smiling slightly. "This," she said, tapping her pen against the table, "is going to ruin them." Within days, a lawsuit was filed against Catherine's firm, alleging unethical promotion practices, conflicts of interest, and professional misconduct. The accusations didn't just target Catherine, Travis, and Daniel. It went straight to the top. Margaret Davis, the firm's esteemed partner, had knowingly facilitated these promotions in exchange for silence and complicity. And now, she was about to learn just how quickly a career built on manipulation could crumble. At the same time, I filed for divorce, demanding $2.8 million in compensation, not out of greed, but as a statement. Catherine had spent years climbing her way to the top by using people as stepping stones. Now, she would watch as every ill-gotten gain slipped through her fingers. The news broke faster than even I expected. A whistleblower lawsuit against one of the city's most prestigious law firms? The press latched onto the story like vultures circling fresh prey. At first, Catherine and her firm scrambled to contain the fallout. They issued vague denials, claiming the allegations were baseless, a desperate attempt by a bitter husband to ruin his wife's career. But the problem with lies is that they only work when no one else knows the truth. And I wasn't the only one who had seen behind the curtain. Former employees, those who had been sidelined for refusing to play along with the firm's toxic culture, came forward. One after another, they provided testimony about the unethical promotions, the backdoor deals, the coercion, and the cover-ups. It was like pulling a single loose thread and watching an entire tapestry unravel. Clients began dropping the firm in droves. No one wanted to be associated with a company now synonymous with corruption. Within weeks, the firm's projected earnings plummeted, and investors started backing out. The financial losses hit $35 million in record time, a hemorrhaging that no amount of damage control could stop. Margaret Davis, once untouchable, resigned in disgrace, her decades-long reputation obliterated in an instant. She had spent her career grooming young lawyers for success, but now, the only legacy she left behind was scandal. Travis and Daniel didn't get off any easier. As evidence mounted against them, the Bar Association launched an investigation, and within months, their law licenses were revoked. Their careers, their prestige, the very power they had wielded so ruthlessly, it was all gone. And Catherine? She fought. She tried everything, crying, pleading, even attempting to negotiate. But she had spent years weaving a web of lies, and now she was tangled in it. The firm, the career, the influence, everything she had sacrificed for was slipping through her grasp, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The divorce was finalized swiftly. She lost more than just money. She lost credibility. No firm would touch her after the scandal. She had been a rising star, but now she was just another cautionary tale. As I walked out of the courthouse for the last time, the weight of the past weeks finally lifted. The betrayal, the pain, the deception, it was all over. And though I hadn't planned for this war, I had won it. And Catherine? She was left standing in the ruins of the empire she had built, a woman who had sacrificed everything for power, only to be left with nothing at all. The aftermath of the scandal left Catherine in ruins. The divorce was swift and brutal, stripping her of everything she once held dear. Her career, once a symbol of power and success, was gone. No reputable firm would take her after the disgrace she had brought upon herself. Friends who had once admired her turned their backs, unwilling to be associated with her name. Her social circles disintegrated, leaving her in a world she no longer recognized, a world where she was no longer feared or respected, but pitted. For years, she drifted. She tried rebuilding, clawing her way back into the legal field through lower-tier firms, but every attempt ended in failure. No one trusted her. She eventually remarried, desperate for stability, but life had a cruel sense of irony. Her new husband, a businessman named Victor, turned out to be just like her, secretive, manipulative. When she discovered his infidelity, she realized the bitter taste of betrayal firsthand. She had sacrificed a loyal husband for ambition, only to be left alone once again, forced to stare at the wreckage of her choices. Richard, meanwhile, had spent years in solitude. He had no interest in jumping into another relationship after the disaster with Catherine. He focused on his career, on rediscovering who he was outside of the pain she had caused. But life, as unpredictable as ever, had different plans. One evening, driving home from a late meeting, he noticed a stranded car on the highway. Its hood popped open, steam rising from the engine. Without much thought, he pulled over. That was when he met Jennifer Harris, a woman whose life had also been touched by betrayal. A divorced mother of two, Jennifer had gone through her own storm, but had come out of it with a quiet resilience Richard couldn't help but admire. What started as an act of kindness, helping her fix her car, turned into something more. Over time, they found themselves reaching out to each other, first as friends, then as something deeper. Jennifer wasn't like Catherine. There was no high-stakes ambition, no games, no constant need to prove something. She was steady, kind, and honest. She wasn't looking for power, just companionship, trust, and a fresh start. They spent 2.5 years growing together before Richard finally proposed. Their marriage wasn't filled with the same wild passion he once had with Catherine, but it was peaceful. It was real, and after everything he had been through, that was enough. Meanwhile, Margaret Davis, once a feared partner in the legal world, had spent years trying to rebuild her life after resigning in disgrace. The weight of her past choices hung over her, and she found herself at a crossroads. She reached out to Richard, not as an enemy, but as someone seeking guidance. The woman who once enabled deception was now searching for redemption. Sitting across from him in a quiet cafe, she asked, "How do you start over when your past won't let go?" Richard, older and wiser now, met her gaze steadily. By doing what Catherine never could, by telling the truth. Face what you've done, own it, and fight for what's left. But this time do it honestly. Margaret nodded, absorbing his words. Maybe she still had time to reclaim what she had lost. Maybe, just maybe, there's still a path forward. And as Richard walked away that evening, he realized that life had finally given him something Catherine never could: peace.